Did you also notice that despite all these new game releases, nothing can still match the magic we get from those old titles? There's something truly unique about those retro games that many players still crave. If you're fed up with modern gaming fads, this list is for you. I've put together a collection of single-player games that are not only awesome, but also clearly outshine many new titles. We've got lots of games to explore, so let's jump in. Starting off, we have Metro 2033, which first hit the scene in 2010. That's pretty old, folks, and it's just as gripping now as it was when it landed on store shelves and digital platforms. It's a moody, post-apocalyptic first-person shooter set in the Moscow Metro's tunnels, and it really nailed two things: creating a vivid atmosphere and making survival in that world a tough challenge. This game keeps you on edge with limited supplies, creepy horror, and sneaky stealth moments in well-crafted levels. It's truly one of a kind, and they meticulously rebuilt the Moscow Metro tunnels. I haven't been there myself, but I've heard it's super accurate. Sure, it's dark and intense, but that's what makes the game stick with you. It launched in 2010, and in 2014, 4A Games dropped an updated version, Metro 2033 Redux, keeping all the gameplay and story intact with sharper visuals, ensuring that playing it in 2025 still feels fresh, not like some outdated relic from 2010. At number 9, we've got Sleeping Dogs. There's a ton of crime games out there, you know? Most of them are all about guns and shooting, and honestly, that gets boring after a while. It really does. Sleeping Dogs focuses on hand-to-hand fighting instead of constant gun battles, which feels like a nice change, and it still holds up today. I have to mention the story because it's solid, with great characters and all that, but that's not the main reason I'm talking about Sleeping Dogs. You play as an undercover cop in Hong Kong's criminal underworld, throwing punches and tossing people around in one of the few really good open-world fighting systems out there. It takes the Batman Arkham-style combat and makes it even better by letting you use the environment, like smashing guys into refrigerators or slamming them into car engines. It's awesome. It puts its own unique spin on a system that already exists and improves it. The driving is a blast too. The shooting and other stuff are there, sure, but the real fun is in getting up close and personal with your fists. I know it sounds like I'm describing a beat-em-up simulator, but come on, it's inspired by old Hong Kong action movies where people get taken down in all sorts of creative ways, and Sleeping Dogs delivers exactly that vibe. Moving on to number 8, I think I really have to include Uncharted 2 here. Well, actually, the entire series is solid. The whole series is worth revisiting, but the second one is a huge step up in quality compared to the first, and it's still incredibly fun. It feels a lot like playing an Indiana Jones movie turned into a game, with cutscenes, scripted moments, and tons of climbing on things that, honestly, look like they shouldn't be climbed. It's one of those games that really put Naughty Dog on the map as a top-tier developer, especially because of its stunning production quality. There's a bunch of cinematic fluff in this game, no doubt about it, but somehow it doesn't drag the experience down. It feels like it should, but it just doesn't. I think that's mostly because it was so fresh to see such intense focus on making a story feel so over the top. Like just the train scene and the window jumping at the start of the game, plus it's hilarious. Nathan Drake is such a charming goofball. I absolutely adore the guy. Next up, we've got Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor, and listen, it's in the Lord of the Rings world, but that's not the main reason we're talking about it. This game is worth revisiting because of its Nemesis system, which is hands down the best example showing that video games can, and really should, be way more lively and unpredictable than they usually are. It's just orcs with random names and looks popping up in your game way more than in typical story-driven games. When you first defeat one, they'll scamper off, only to come back tougher, throwing taunts your way. If they beat you, they'll brag about it, and if you win, you can either make them your ally or take them out for good. It's a straightforward setup, but it does something huge that's kept me hooked for years. It makes playing the game feel like you're living the story, not just filling time between plot points. It's clearly a game, but somehow it feels more like you're in a real world than most story-focused games, which is the vibe it sticks to. Honestly, there's a bunch of standard gameplay here that's totally worth checking out, And I kinda wish every game had this level of clever storytelling, even if the main plot itself is pretty basic.
We're gonna hurt you!
Alright, at number 6, we've got Arkham City. You can't talk about many games on this list without mentioning the big deal, the guy who might be the most game-changing figure in video game history, Batman, not just because of who he is, but because of what this game did for how you play. The open-world setup built on the first game's ideas, turning it into a bigger, semi-open city, and while some might think a sequel could feel kind of average or off, man, this game is in a league of its own. The story, the exploring, the fighting, it's all way smoother than the first game, and the bigger world gives you so much more to mess around with instead of just chasing endless collectibles. Don't get me wrong, the first Arkham game had plenty of those to grab, but this one, these games, they set a standard that not just superhero games, but tons of games straight up copied. And even some of the best copycats can't quite match the original Batman game, which really says something. It shows how awesome the game is and also highlights what lots of modern games try to pull off. It doesn't always hit the mark perfectly, since it doesn't always fit just right with every action. You know, there are games I enjoy that mimic this one, but there are also games that, well, totally mess up what this game does so well. Anyway, this is one of those classic games I think you should totally check out again. Kicking off at number 5, we've got Max Payne 3. Way before every game started tossing in slow motion, this series made slowing down time in shooters feel, well, awesome for want of a better word. The first 2 Max Payne games mixed a dash of Hong Kong action movie flair into what usually felt like standard military shooters or typical combat mechanics back then, creating something fresh, fun, and a bit odd. Alongside the game's heavy crime drama, they threw in some wild bosses and memorable moments, and Remedy deserves huge props for those games. But honestly, Max Payne 3 is the peak of the series. That might stir up some debate for fans who love the story. It does strip away some of the elements that make Max Payne so gripping. Clearly, Remedy didn't make the third one. Rockstar does things their own way. So Max Payne 3 still packs those insane action scenes and cranks them up big time. It also revamps the shooting and movement so well that, frankly, this is probably Rockstar's best playing shooter even now. It's just a brilliantly made story, a string of action scenes with so many moments burned into my memory. Like, Max isn't just strolling past a group of thugs in a nightclub without blasting them. It gives you a reason for nearly everything. For a game all about shooting, it's super well thought out. Is it wild and over the top? Yep. Max Payne wouldn't be Max Payne otherwise, but it's just a crazy well-made game.
Here now!
Moving on to number 4, it's BioShock, the entire trilogy, honestly. Worth talking about because these games are amazing, but if I had to choose one, I'd go with the original. Seriously, play them all. They're major games, all 3 top-notch first-person shooters. If I had to pick the best second BioShock game, I'd say BioShock Infinite over BioShock 2, since BioShock 2 feels like a repeat of the first and isn't as great, while BioShock Infinite shakes things up and pulls it off. Plus, it has some really solid story elements, and it's old enough to be worth checking out again, but honestly, the first BioShock from 2007 still holds up strong. The underwater dystopian city of Rapture is still an incredibly immersive place to wander through. There's just something unique about the vibe in that city, you know? You just don't find a better atmosphere than Rapture. All I'll say is, would you kindly? And, well, give it a go. Yeah, we're including 2 remakes on this list, but to be totally honest, those remakes are starting to feel a bit dated now. God of War 3 snags the number 3 spot, and honestly, jumping back to it after the newer games feels a bit odd since, well, this one's like the wild child compared to the more polished recent titles. On one side, you've got Kratos, the grumpy dad vibe. On the other, you've got this over-the-top, destroy-everything God of War 3, kicking things off by taking down the sea god himself. That's a huge shift. Weirdly, as much as I dig the newer God of War games, this one just nails the classic God of War vibe, if you get what I mean. It's like a thrilling amusement park ride with crazy action scenes, wild boss battles, and a bloody, gory finale. It's the most God of War game ever. You can't top this level of God of War intensity. It's the perfect wrap-up to the story from God of War 1 and 2, and honestly, sometimes diving back into games like this or Devil May Cry just hits right, even if it feels a little naughty. Talking about Devil May Cry, I think I also have to mention the reboot of the game to number 2 spot. Yeah, they tried a reboot, and folks still can't stop bashing it. Honestly, I think it's one of the most unfairly criticized games out there. I'd say it's because going back to games like the original God of War or Devil May Cry feels so good it almost feels wrong. When I say that, I'm really giving props to these kinds of games. Maybe it's partly guilt, or maybe everyone's expectations were super low since it came after Devil May Cry 4. That's not a bad game by any means, but the jump from Devil May Cry 4 to DMC Devil May Cry is like the leap from Devil May Cry 1 to 3. It's a huge step up. It's the best Devil May Cry game until 5 came along, and I'm sticking to that. It makes the story better, tells it in a cooler way, improves the fighting, and shakes things up in both areas, not just by telling a deeper, more engaging story, but doing it with a slick style that never takes away the player's control when it shouldn't. That's something God of War 3 nails too, but what sets DMC Devil May Cry apart from other Devil May Cry games is the serious, gritty vibe of the character's story woven into all the wild hack-and-slash action. This game turned Devil May Cry from a silly series into one where you actually cared about what happened next, even if it was, well, pretty out there. Finally topping the list is the rebooted Tomb Raider trilogy, and we reckon it's way overdue for a replay. Crystal Dynamics developed these, with the Square Enix publishing them from 2013 to 2018, and they're just solid games, plain and simple. They're top-notch third-person action-adventure titles where you step into Lara Croft's boots, and they're seriously good. I've got hardly anything bad to say about any of them. They're also big deals in gaming. They completely revamped Tomb Raider and even shaped other action games like the newer God of War titles. The fighting feels exciting and movie-like. The story moments still look great, and honestly, it's an adventure worth diving into at least once more. The puzzles can feel a bit basic at times, but for me, that's a plus since they're fun instead of feeling like roadblocks, you know? They're not the toughest puzzles I've ever tackled, but they're enjoyable and pull me in rather than push me away. Some games have mechanics that get on your nerves, but these don't, and I'm genuinely grateful for that. The stealth in these games, while simple, is like a small touch that Tomb Raider got right, making it feel meaningful instead of a forced slog you just have to endure. And that's the rundown. 10 classic games worth revisiting in 2025. But here's a thought. What's missing from this list? Any old favorites you played back in the day or have been itching to replay but haven't gotten around to fixing that yet, you know?